Hello everyone, and welcome to the first ever Student Forum for Online Referendum Voting. The format today is going to be I'm going to sit down as well. The format today is going to be a discussion. It's a discussion point on many different questions that have been raised and submitted to OUSA. You can find them in your agenda, and if you don't have an agenda, I'm sure there's one floating around. You'll see Art waving them around in the back, so grab one off of him. So this is going to be a discussion for the online voting. The idea is that everyone is going to be filmed today, and if you're, I suppose, not all right with that, let us know and we'll try and leave you out. And what is filmed will be put online so that those who are voting can hear both sides of the discussion. Voting will take place between the 11th and the 14th on the OUSA website, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of links coming through on Facebook and through email and things like that. There's a few things to be noted. The proposed constitutional changes and the proposed 2011 OUSA budget notes are not in the agenda, but there are solid copies up on the desk near Donna here. She'll raise her hand high in the air. And if you'd like to see those, just go up and have a wee skim through. Safety contact. If at any point you want to speak to a safety contact or want someone to ask a question on behalf of you, Claire Jackson down here in the front in the green and blue jacket will be more than happy to help you. And let's see, I'll be your elected chairperson for this meeting. And if it's all right with everyone here, we're going to use loose standing orders. We're not going to stick to the book too much unless it gets out of control. I think everyone here is going to be more or less respectful of everyone else. And I'll just allow things, and if someone has an issue, raise it at the time and we can deal with it then. So at this point, unless I'm forgetting about anything else, we're also being joined by a few of our members in Wellington via Skype. First time this has ever happened. Very exciting. They're down in that computer. And unless there's anything I'm forgetting, I think we can probably jump right into it. The first item on the agenda for today is question 1. Unless this is right, if this is right. Question 1, should the proposed OUSA budget for 2011 be adopted? If we have James Meager to come up and speak to that. Round of applause for James Meager. Wearing a radar badge.
Okay, thanks everyone for turning up. What a good turnout. Hey, so today, I've just got some reading notes here that I'll just read out to you. So today the membership will be asked to consider whether or not the proposed budget for 2011 should be approved. The budget setting process this year has gone through, in my opinion, a much improved process of consultation and consideration by the association. I'd first like to thank General Manager Stephen Alexander for his tireless work and accurate calculations on this budget, and also like to thank all those who did make submissions in one form or another. It was good to see the budget discussion take place on Facebook this year. There was a lot of diverse and probably different input that we usually would get, and probably a lot of the same. We did take time to consider each submission, and while there are always going to be winners and losers, I believe that this budget will be sufficient to see the association through 2011. That is not to say that I think the budget is perfect. Nothing agreed to by committee ever is. I believe that, though, in this environment we find ourselves in, that is the threat of voluntary student membership, this will be the last OUSA budget that you see in this form for a long time. I do not envy those who have the task in 2011 of setting a budget that may see its operational income drop by 75%. It is unfortunate that a more substantial pruning and moulding of the budget could not take place before the VSM legislation came out of Select Committee, but I trust that those in charge of it in the coming years will act as prudently and wisely when budgeting as to how to spend the association's money and arrange the association's assets, which have stemmed from the money that thousands of students have paid over many decades. So as mentioned before, the budget setting process this year has gone through wide and thorough consultation. In early May, I met with the General Manager, Stephen Alexander, to set out a path of the budget setting process. After several discussions and many hours, we agreed to go through the following process. So what happened was that we told staff and executive that they'd have until June 30th to make budget submissions on their own lines and on any other lines as they saw fit. The staff to send these through to the General Manager and the executive to myself. To make the allocation of budgets a little bit more realistic and to help people understand where things were spent more accurately, the staff were asked to allocate their wages roughly into where they spend most of their time. Thus, this gave a more accurate reflection of how much we spend on certain services and activities. Once a very draft budget had been drawn up, Stephen and myself sought advice from the executive as to the type of levy model that they preferred. This went through a formal meeting of the executive, and the draft budget at that stage and proposed levy models were made available to students to comment on. This was mainly through Critic using the agenda and posting it online, and use of the discussion threads there. This was made a lot more helpful by use of Critic and Facebook, which received many comments surrounding the budget and proposed models. Once advice had been sought and submissions on the levy considered, a draft budget was presented formally at the executive meeting the following week, giving students their second opportunity to comment. Following this meeting, the first draft budget was actually put on notice formally, and formal submissions on the budget were sought for 2 weeks, thus giving students their third opportunity to have a say on the budget. Although the amount of submissions that we received was actually very poor, I think it amounted to about 4, we did appreciate the feedback that was given by various submitters, and pending the outcome of the budget, I will be replying to them and saying basically how their submissions are went and how we considered them. The budget was then slightly tweaked and presented to an executive meeting, giving students a fourth opportunity to comment. Finally, it has come to this stage where the final budget is proposed to the student body, giving them their fifth and what is ultimately final chance to comment on it. I believe the consultation process has been thorough and much increased on some past years, and my many thanks for the compliments received by members of the association on the process. Finally, to the budget itself, I'll highlight some significant content. Aside from the structural changes to the executive, is not entirely different from previous budgets. There were no huge changes made apart from, of course, the altering of executive budget lines to reflect a more committee-based structure allocation of funds, an increase in the subsidy to Planet Media in order to continue the operation of Critic, Radio 1 and the Planet Media sales team, a decrease in the subsidy to University Sport New Zealand on a recreation unit review recommendation that OUSA no longer be a member of that organisation, a reallocation of staff wages into the new communications line to reflect the staffing input that we value there, and of course a rebalancing of the levy to reduce the operational budget deficit to zero and cease the practice of heavily over-levying for capital expenditure. So, saying that, I would recommend that the proposed budget be approved by the student body in the online vote. And just as an aside, if anyone speaking today would like to give me their speaking notes or any sort of notes they have, I can try and make sure that they get put online aside any additional information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Now, it's a very long, tedious, and sometimes frustrating process, but he's come out with a final result. At this point, I'd like to open up the floor to questions about the budget for James or anyone else that may be able to answer them. And if you don't want to come up on stage, it's a wireless mic, so we can bring it out to you. Any questions? So at this point, if anyone does raise anything, it'll be filmed and put online. Otherwise, it would just go yes or no, will the budget be approved for 2011? No one? One. Yes, in Wellington.
I want to know why there isn't a budget line for non-medical students at Wellington. There's a budget line for medical students.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to assume that the person asking this question isn't aware of the talks that we've been having over the past year with non-med students in Wellington. So what happens currently is that the Wellington Med Students Association receive their levies back to them, fully refunded apart from the cost of national subsidies to NZUSA, USNZ and SJS. What has happened is that in the past we've tried to get a group of non-Wellington Med students together in order to form a more formal association with which we can refund the levies straight back to them. Basically in recognition that we can't provide the same services to them in Wellington as we do down here. We currently do that with Christchurch Med students, the postgraduates in Christchurch and the Southland Teachers College students. What we have done though is I've been in contact with Trevor Williams, who is the postgraduate liaison officer in Wellington, and basically because we can't contract with individuals, because we can't have that level of trust and the liability that comes with sending levies back to an individual and then trust them to sort of distribute them to all non-med students in Wellington. We have to do this with a recognised body. We do that with CMSA in Christchurch, PSOC in Christchurch, SCSA in Southland and WMSA in Wellington. So yes, as I said, what I have done is I've been talking to Trevor Williams in Wellington, and we are currently negotiating a way that we can fund the university, their levies that are basically for postgrads to start with, but eventually to all non-med students. It has been difficult because the students up in Wellington don't want to form an association up there. They don't think that they have the time to do so, which makes it difficult for us to be able to provide them any funding on an individual basis. So what we are doing at the moment is we are talking to Trevor, and I am going to figure out a similar sort of funding agreement with him that the university can put on some sort of social events or whatever basically the students up there need. But yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, and thank you for your question as well. Are there any other questions at this time around the budget? Keeping in mind that